we work to be accessible. It really, and I love being out in schools. I love the fact that someone who I don't even know in the division will email or call and say, I know you don't know me and maybe this isn't appropriate, but I'd like to talk to you, and you can talk to them. And that was always modeled to me from the beginning as a young teacher. And I think it's still true today.
So something's happening in the province of Manitoba. We have had a number of new superintendents, female superintendents added to the corps. There weren't that many in the province until just recently, but there are some now. Today I interview CEO, Superintendent Lisa Boles of Pembina Trails, who is one of these newish superintendents. And just great to speak with Lisa, who is a lifelong Pembina Trails educator. And I think that provides some really, really interesting context. And we talk a little bit about that in our interview today. Today's episode, like all episodes, are brought to you by Advanced Learning Partnerships. We serve communities in Canada and the US and have been doing so for over a dozen years, providing really customized professional learning. And when we say customized, it really is suited to the needs of each individual district. And we have a number, dozens and dozens, that is, of really high quality consultants and facilitators who do that great work. And again, today, we're just so grateful to talk with Lisa, hear her perspective, how she has worked to include a spirit of inclusion, and we talk about truth and reconciliation, a lot of important topics today. So enjoy my conversation with Lisa Boles. So Lisa, you're sitting there in your beautiful office on a sunny summer day still, and you have been an educator, lifelong educator, let's say, in Pembina. And I wonder, now that you're superintendent and have sort of, or CEO, I guess those words sometimes are interchangeable. What advantages and or challenges do you think that gives you being sort of a lifer in Pembina?
So Pembina Trails School Division was an amalgamated school division in 2002, and I've been here since 1992. And so the advantages, I think, have to do with the evolution of the system and getting to know people really well, families, communities, staff, the board. All have been really supportive throughout the years. As an educator, I've worked in 7 different buildings in Pembina Trails, and then three different roles in senior admin now too. And so the great thing about that too is I think when I started, I was a 23-year-old woman, and both the staff and the board and everyone has never. It's never been an issue being a woman and being in these different roles as a vice principal, as a principal, as a senior admin member. And I've never overthought that, but I've always appreciated it. Yeah.
I mean, there's no question that over that time, obviously you wouldn't still be at Pembina Trails had you not built up a lot of social capital and trust. Mm-hmm. And you know, as you see new people enter the division, like how do you sort of when you think about the culture, I guess, if you will, because to me that word comes to mind when I think about somebody who's been there that long and has earned that trust. What is the culture that you sort of can, I don't know, feel or pass along to new people as they enter the division? Like, what is it about Pembina Trails you think that has kept you there your whole career, and you want others to sort of feel the same sort of sense of belonging?
I think it's always been a system, and even when we got bigger, when we amalgamated, we work to be accessible. It really, and I love being out in schools. I love the fact that someone who I don't even know in the division will email or call and say, I know you don't know me and maybe this isn't appropriate, but I'd like to talk to you, and you can talk to them. And that was always modeled to me from the beginning as a young teacher. And I think it's still true today. We do lots of things that other people do. You're onboarding new employees, you're welcoming not just on the pedagogical side, but the into the culture of it. And we do want people to know we're accessible, and that, even as we continue to get big, we strive to know who our people are and what their work is and what they value and what we value. And it works well.
And I think, when you talk about the amalgamation, that was something I went through here in Saskatchewan a number of
Mhm.
years ago. And I mean, relatively speaking, it's not a large division as, you might think of like a Toronto District School Board or something, but
Yes.
it always felt, at
Mhm.
least from like when you went from being your small little thing where you knew everybody and adding, others, it felt like, oh, this is getting to be big, and again, relative term. But I think that notion of, because I think that's what I felt, that we lost something, that there was less accessibility, that was just more difficult. You felt like you couldn't reach out. So I love the fact that you've acknowledged that anybody can email you, anybody can talk to you, and you are not, on an ivory tower,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. Which, again, if you talk to people from really, really large districts, they would think, well, obviously, but it's not that obvious. So I think there's now. So when you talk about visibility and so forth, like what are some of the things that you're doing? Like, I don't know, like how often are you in schools? Like how often are you kind of moving around? I'm always curious to know about how superintendents spend their time.
I don't know how every superintendent spends their time. We do spend a lot of time in meetings, and some of them are in person, and some of them are, virtual or hybrid now. But so one of the things that I inherited from Ted, my predecessor, is I make every effort to get out to every one of our schools in the first month of September, no matter what. And obviously COVID made that challenging, but I continued to do that, and I will be starting my rounds very shortly. Over the summer, we run summer programming, Ignite 3 summer programming, and it's nice to get out to the schools. And we did some wind ups, and we did some bouncy castle and races, and I picked up garbage and helped with the kids. It's what we
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
right? And just because you're the superintendent doesn't mean you can't be and shouldn't be out doing those things. So I get to 2 or 3 schools a week,
Mm.
unless something's gone horribly wrong.
Well, and given the fact that you began as a classroom teacher, that's never far from your
No.
mind and your thinking in terms of what they need and what they're experiencing. You recently launched a new strategic plan, and
Mm-hmm.
these are things that, for some people are, um, they can be very abstract and very maybe distant from the reality. But I know that's not how you feel about your strategic plan. So what is it about? Maybe you can just share. You don't have to, just a couple of the highlights of that strategic plan that really kind of excite you and think, yeah, I'm excited to see how this is going to transpire and manifest itself.
So the board and senior admin and the staff and community was building off what I think was a really solid mission, vision, values, and what we think of as our core is our 3 expectations for student learning. Because a lot of great work happened after amalgamation to be able to build the culture of a new school division. I think the new strategic plan, I know the pillars can be high level, and our 3 pillars are student success, strategic investments, and system wellness. And I'm excited about those because they speak to the core values of what we're doing and what the work is. And so, everything from a new ERP system, which can make a really great opportunity in terms of onboarding and recruitment, retention, all those things. Having great people work in Pembina Trails across the system is what makes Pembina Trails great, right?
Right.
And so something as perhaps unsexy as a new ERP system is still really important to the overall success of the system. We're going into with the new strategic plan and our work. The 6 global competencies that Manitoba Education is looking at, and we're diving right into that. So I find that really exciting
Mm-hmm.
and interesting. Creativity, critical thinking, citizenship, collaboration, connection to self, and communication. So of course, literacy and numeracy, graduation, Indigenous student success, all really important things to us. but to think about what our students, our young people are going to be global citizens. We
Right.
already are, right? So it's just going to become more so. So we're really excited to dive into that and do it Pembina Trails style, because that's like what we all like to do, but we definitely like to do that in Pembina Trails. And then the system wellness piece, again, a big focus post pandemic on our students' wellness, and trying to see what we can do to also support our staff wellness across the system as well.
You, when you and I talked earlier, you mentioned truth and reconciliation as something that Pembina Trails is really dove. And I mean, across Canada, for those people who are not Canadians, who aren't aware, it is pretty much a top priority everywhere. Everywhere I talk, people are trying, and yet, from what I know and have experienced, it's a struggle sometimes to get, like people are very well meaning, they want to do good work, but oftentimes, they just struggle with sort of actionable items. But I think you feel like you've made some strides in that area. So maybe you can share some of the things that you've done around that you're proud of.
Well, we're building off lots of people's good work. So the curriculum department, obviously, as well, and we have invested the time and energy. And so what it is building staff competency in those areas too, right? We engage a lot with elders and knowledge keepers, and have for a while, and will continue to do so. We have Indigenous student success teachers that are out in the schools every day, and what they're doing is they're co-teaching and coming alongside staff in developing lessons and just people's competency and their sense of self-assuredness that they can do this work if they're not Indigenous, without without being culturally, appropriate things wrongly, or so it's really interconnected. And then we also, each of our schools have what we call a teacher champion, which is basically a teacher who's based right in the school every day and is alongside all these support people, working towards reconciliation within a building and supporting that work in a building with students and with other staff. So those things, but some of it was a vision, right? And the
Hmm?
vision has students at the center again, and then building all the actions around it. Done a lot of treaty training, and we'll continue to do so with all our staff. And we're going into this year, post COVID, again, being able to have built back out our Indigenous student leadership group, and making sure that we have the voices of the people that should be at the table.
And I don't know if I always felt like maybe the statistics bear it out that Winnipeg has one of the highest Indigenous populations, I think, in Canada, one of them. So I mean,
It is.
it's a big deal. Yeah, I mean,
It
and it's
is.
great to see everybody doing it, but there's obviously additional urgency around cities like Winnipeg who have who definitely have Indigenous students and families in their communities that they're trying to support. So yeah, that's awesome. And again, I think people look to divisions like you to say like, hey, what are you doing? Not that you figured it all out, and I know you don't ever claim that, but you're I guess excited about the path that you're on. Usually when I do the podcast, I always like to, it's great to talk about successes, which we've shared some, but there's always challenges, right? You're in a difficult role, and there's many challenges that you face as a leader that you maybe you hopefully look back and say, I think I handled that pretty well, but it certainly wasn't easy at the time. Do you have a challenge that you can share with us that maybe you faced as a leader, and how you overcame it or are overcoming it?
There would be many of those, especially in my first year last year. But I think always
Yeah.
one of our biggest challenges is just making sure our capacity is building. So we are one of the fastest growing divisions in Manitoba, and so we're adding 600 or 700 students a year. And with that becomes all the challenges around continuing to be able to have great staff in both English track and French immersion, transportation for families. Uh, Often challenges or concerns around catchment areas and having schools that are not too overfilled. And we're also continually building and in relation to that. We've opened a new school, K-8, in January of 2023, and the high school is opening next week. 9 to 12, and now we're also on our way. We're just in the very beginnings of two new K-8s as well, in the Waverly West area of our school division, and so there's just a lot of things that can be challenging to families and to us in terms of building organizational capacity around this growth.
Is it is it fair to say that because I don't, across Canada it seems like finding, you talked about it, kind of referenced it earlier about finding the right people. Are there challenges in finding people to fill some of these areas?
And hopefully without arrogance, because I've only been in this role for a year. Pembina Trails has a history of being an employer of choice, but at the same time, again, everybody's competing for the same amount of resources.
Right.
So some of that work is even begins in school with our students, having bright, capable, diverse students be interested in going into education after graduation, to some aspects of our collective agreement that are appealing to people in terms of things like joint PD fund or extracurricular recognition days that that means we notice and are paying attention to all the things that in this case teachers and other staff members that volunteer do. But I would say the biggest challenge still too is capacity and French immersion, right? And
Mm.
so doing things and engaging as a system, as Metro Winnipeg, even in terms of you can recruit, you can go out to McGill, you can go out to Quebec, but lots of people aren't necessarily always interested to coming to Winnipeg and working in the winter time, or
Yeah.
Winnipeg. So doing a lot of work around homegrown, around our own, the University of St. Boniface, and the Joint PD Fund and other ways really supports people if they want to go back to school and work on their French as well and become more fluent. So those are some of the things that we do, and it works, but it's going to continue to be a challenge.
And just refresh my memory on collective bargaining. If I'm not mistaken, unlike Saskatchewan, Alberta, and other, that your bargaining is at the division level. There isn't a provincial bargaining team. Is that correct?
That is correct, and
Yeah.
we are moving into provincial bargaining. So that is
Oh,
currently underway.
okay.
And this last year was the first year of starting to sort through that. So at some point, it will be provincial
Right.
bargaining for the teachers.
Which I always just found a little bit, because that's more of a U.S. kind of style of bargaining where it's done at the individual school district level as opposed
Mhm.
to a broader sort of state. So, and I always wondered how that how folks navigated that. The other thing is interesting. I was speaking with um, a principal in a superintendent in the Northwest Territories talking about not having principals who were part of the union, whereas in British Columbia, principals are out of scope. So there's all of these little
Yes.
nuances, differences, and yet. I mean, people seem to figure it out. I don't know that there's probably not a huge discrepancy in salaries across Manitoba. Everybody kind of, it's pretty competitive. But like as you spoke about, the individual things that you can do as a district that helps differentiate you to other is pretty important. Is there any, like, I don't know, is there anything that comes to mind in your agreement that you say, like, here's something that we do that we're really that we use to kind of entice or enhance people to choose Pembina Trails?
Well, again, extracurricular recognition days have been the case for a while in Manitoba and in Pembina Trails. We have up to a maximum of five,
Oh,
which I
wow.
believe is the highest, right?
Okay.
Or at least in Metro Winnipeg. So that's a piece, a little piece, but also we have something called the Joint PD Fund, which is a substantial amount of money that that teachers can apply for funding. There's lots of different categories. Some of
Right.
them are PLCs, some of them are university coursework, some of them
Yeah.
are in province PD sessions, some are out of province PD sessions, and it it has parameters, but it recognizes the autonomy and interests of teachers in terms of pursuing professional growth, and it supports them in that, and it's substantial, it's substantive, and it makes a difference. It's appealing to people, yeah.
Well, yeah, yeah. And I always just find that your efforts to be creative in those, because again, I realize we're not never talking about masses amounts of money, but those little kind of things, right? And recognition, as you talk about, whether it's through extracurricular or just even providing professional learning opportunities. It's amazing how those little things can make a difference for somebody. Just to say, like, listen, it's not about throwing me gobs of money. Everybody knows when they go education, like you're not
Mhm.
here to get rich. Here's how much money you're going to get, roughly speaking. But it is about like feeling valued and knowing that like, yeah, people care about what I do. So it's amazing how those little things, I think sometimes people forget that, like, it doesn't have to be a big thing, but it's a gesture and it's a culture and it's a stance that we take that says this is how we want to acknowledge people. So yeah, kudos to you on that.
Yeah. Again, I can't
Um,
take personal credit for it, but yeah,
Well, no, but
absolutely.
you're hey, you know what's going on, and you're the one that has to advocate for a lot of this stuff too. So I mean, it is a very important part of your role. Well, thanks for this part of the conversation and getting to know a little bit more about all the things at Pembina Trails and your role, and I know as a newish superintendent CEO, you're figuring things out. And I mean, again, you'll always be figuring things out no matter how long
Yeah,
you do this
absolutely.
this role. But wanted to finish with a couple of what I call fun questions. I don't know how fun they
Yeah.
are, but like a little bit more about get to know Lisa. You were sharing a little bit before we recorded about your time at the cabin and those kind of things. But wondering if I don't know, over the summer or whatever, if there's anything you've been reading or listening to that's been capturing your attention. It can be professional, it can be personal. Just what are you reading or listening to these days?
So, over the summer, I call it chips and dip reading.
Yeah.
So that is just more popular bestsellers, that kind of thing. I really like a broad range of things. I like science fiction and fantasy. I like murder mysteries. I like the whole gambit. And in terms of more professional reading, what we're reading right now, and just started reading, was White Benevolence. It's a collection of works. And the subtitle is Racism and Colonial Violence in the Helping Professions. So something from social work point of view, education, all across the systems and the helping system. So it's a good read. It's a little bit heavier, as you can imagine, and but it's something as a system that the Pembina Trails, the leadership group, we're reading as we're going into our fall work. So
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's great
mhm.
to have kind of a book clubbish kind of
Yeah.
thing that people can have common language about. Anything that you have watched or are watching, it could be a guilty pleasure, anything like that. There's no judgment here. I listen. I've watched reality shows, like I whatever. Anything you kind of been entertaining to you?
Absolutely, love that kind of thing. I don't reality show it, but I just finished watching season 2 of The Bear, and
What's
I
that?
love it. It's on Apple. It is about a chef, uh, and I love to cook
I
in that, but it's really
Okay.
character. It's really character driven. It's amazing. So season 2 just dropped about a month ago on Apple, and I would highly recommend it.
Okay. All
Hmm.
right. I'll add that to my. I got about five or six thing. I went through a dry spell where I didn't have anything I was watching because I just was watching sports, and now it's like,
Yeah,
oh, okay, I need to. So I've got about 4 or 5 on the go that I'm watching. So I'm gonna have to finish those up before I start something new. But I'll put that one down.
action. Yeah.
All right. So if I was to come to your fair city and I wanted to find some place that maybe wouldn't be on the first Google search of things to do in Winnipeg, or places to go, or places to eat, or whatever, can you give me something that's maybe a little lesser known, but you think is worthwhile spot to hit on your trip to Winnipeg?
Outside of the obvious things, I um I love hitting little new restaurants. Some of them are,
Give it.
and we do a lot. I was just at Cordova last week. It's a tapas place. It's amazing, and has a lot of vegan and vegetarian options with it too. So that's good. I think people. I love the winter. I don't love the winter. In fact, I should have been born on the ocean in a hot country somewhere. But you need to make the most of it. So things like just hiking in a lot of our local parks, right in the city. There's a lovely park in our school division called Kings Park, and it's a great place to go winter and summer. It's not a Assiniboine Park. It's not one of the
Right.
focal points. It's not one of maybe a tourist attraction, but something like that, or hiking along the river, along the Seine River is excellent. And there's always lots of sporting things going on outside here, winter and summer. So you can see kite sailers where you never expect to see them, and then more traditional things happening going on.
Well, I appreciate that. For my other Manitoba guests, they can't help but referencing the Forks. So I'm glad you did
Yeah.
say the Forks, because we know that one, and of course
And CMHR avoided that.
yes, and of course the Human Rights Museum, which again is amazing, and so it's not definitely a must attend. But I love these other recommendations. It's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. I know you're busy, and you got these two new schools that are happening. While one opened, you said, in January, and another new one that's got to be taking a lot of time, but also exciting to do. And as kids and staff come back to school in the next little while, I know you're excited to get this school year going, and so I wish you all the best, and thanks for taking time today.
Yeah, it was great to spend time with you. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll talk soon.